Good morning, everyone. This is Ralph from Harold, the Soon Coming King, broadcasting to you from the hills of the Appalachians, from the foothills of the Appalachians. Today is January the 2nd, 2024. It's my first post since May of last year. I believe the Lord will have me to post a little more regularly in 2024. So the picture you're looking at here is one my daughter gave me a couple years ago at Christmas. Hangs on our wall. I love it because it's the picture, obviously, of a believer meeting Jesus shortly after the rapture, and she's jumping into his arms, obviously so glad to see him. And I'm reminded of that this year as we're looking forward to all that I believe will unfold in 2024, as that we're looking forward, and even as this channel describes, that we're heralding his soon coming. I wanted to pick up where I left off in May in the comment about my dream of a tree that was 60 years old and 60 feet tall. I raised the question as I was praying about it that somehow it was tied back into the assassination of JFK, and I wondered if 60 years forward from that date, which was 11/23/63, that on 11/23/23, 60 years later, if something of a similar nature would take place. It was a question, not a thus saith the Lord. And obviously that didn't happen. Biden is still in the presidency, although there was a lot of calling for his leaving office at that time, and I kind of wondered if it was going to come to pass. It didn't. So as I've been praying about it more, I said, Lord, give me a better understanding of what I was dreaming about several years ago when you gave me that dream. And I believe that now that it was the Lord, he was tying it into that time frame. But what he was giving me was the understanding that in those 60 years, from the marking of that president to the marking of this president on that day, those dates, more importantly, from the assassination of Kennedy to that date, marks 60 years. And in those 60 years, we as a nation have moved dramatically away from the things of the Lord, right? We have done so much, and the list would go on here significantly. But we're all aware of these. Everything's from abortion, how we've handled education, how we've handled what's happened to the family, what's happened to the issue of law and justice, and the list would go on so long. But we have moved God out of our country and out of our everyday lives. And so the country now, I believe, has come to that place 60 years later in that time frame where we have been pushing God's hands away. And now God has fully lifted his hand off the United States. And in doing so, his full sense of judgment will now come to pass. It's not wrath. And we really do understand. There's some good teachings, I'm sure, online. I don't think I need to do it here. But there's a major difference between judgment and wrath. And I believe it's judgment that's coming. And that is that because we've sinned, God will bring judgment. It's a sense of justice. But it's also a sense to bring those who are in rebellion, back to the Lord. And we've been unwilling to do that. And God has been able to restore us as a nation, but we continually have been unwilling to do so as a nation. Even though there have been many who have been praying for that, we as a nation generally have not responded. So now God's judgment, I believe, in 2024 will come in more, as I'll describe, in more full measure. And we'll see what the United States does at that point. Whether or not we're even on the world stage in the way that we are today. But I believe this will begin sometime after the eclipse that occurs on April 8th. A lot of us are aware of that. There was one that is probably less familiar. We know that there had been one, of course, previously, 7 years earlier, and now 7 years from 2024. And now there was one in October. Mid-October the 14th, that went from Texas through Maine, Oregon to Texas, and that eclipse occurred. And now this third one is coming, and it does two things. One, it forms the X right there in southern Illinois over New Egypt. There's been a lot of discussion about that. But that third one, there's been some discussion that those three seem to form very close variation of the sign of Aleph, which is the first letter of the Hebraic alphabet. And that number, or that letter, which also has a numerical value, which is 1, represents God. It represents that God's who God is, the oneness of God, and so forth. Again, you can do a major study on that. It's not the point here, but it begins to make me wonder if, with that solar eclipse, if that is not 1, an X over the United States, because the judgment, full weight of God's judgment will come upon the country. In addition, it is a sign from God that He is the one bringing that judgment. It is He that is bringing the full weight of His judgment to the United States. So as I was praying for this new year, back in November, the Lord gave me a word, as He often does, for the year, mainly for me, to kind of look for it. Last year was a time of unprecedented times and events, and I think we saw that with the invasion of Israel on October the 7th. But this year, it was a time for the ages. And I don't have its full understanding, but to me that was quite the weighty word, that this is a time for the ages. And I think we'll see events in 2024 that will be globally significant on all levels, whether that's political, geopolitical, whether it's astronomically. I absolutely believe it's spiritually. On just every front, I think in 2024 we're going to see significant events that occur, and maybe those will fall in line with that unprecedented things we have not seen, and maybe more recent recorded history of man. But definitely these are going to be just a time for the ages. And so it raises that question, that one of the issues, that could it be the year for the rapture? There was a lot of thought and conversation around 2023. I surely was hoping for it during the fall feast time, but really have always felt since 2017 and shortly thereafter that it would be really 2024 that had its best time frame prior or post 2023, when I believed then that it might be the best avenue or time. And I think we are rapidly getting close. If it's not 2024, we're definitely, I believe, in the last few years of the time clock winding up, as it were. But I think that 2024 presents itself as a very significant, and there's a variety of reasons. One of those, or a couple of those I should say, is that it's been 7 years since the Revelation 12 sign. I think that's significant that it would be when we get to the fall feast of this year. And that's where I'm looking for. I always believe that the catching away of believers will occur during the fall feast. And there's a lot around that I think you need to look at and understand. I would recommend Brenda Weltner as probably the best teacher that I have seen that outlines it very well. You have to look through a lot of her teachings to get full understanding. I had, through the Lord, believed that I had found a lot of the things that Brenda talks about. I was probably 75% of the way there when I found her website several years ago. And I've come to really see that God's hand is on her and her ability to teach that subject. But we're 7 years from the Revelation 12 sign. I think that God's astronomical sign over the U.S., perhaps even the Western Hemisphere, I had made mention of that in a previous video. It's probably my most watched one, about a dream God had given me about the destruction of the Western Hemisphere. When I was really looking at these two eclipses, the two larger ones, they kind of extend down into Central South America. You could easily say that it's over the Western Hemisphere, very specifically over the U.S., and I would see that potentially as a quite significant event, in the sense that the U.S. is the leader of the Western Hemisphere. It's also an election year. A lot can happen in that time frame. We know all the different political issues that are going on there. Obviously, one of the biggest signs is war is currently in Israel. There's a lot of conversation, a lot of thoughts in my mind as well. Is this the beginning of Psalm 83 war? If you believe that's already taken place, then is it the beginning of the Ezekiel 38-39 war? Does one lead into the other? Of course, we haven't seen the destruction of Damascus in its entirety yet, so I'm leaning more in that it could be still the Psalm 83 war. But I agree with people like Brenda that war has to be going on in the Middle East before there's a rapture that can occur. And so I think that the possibility of this thing expanding as we watch it daily in the news and follow it surely seems that it is highly possible, if not probable. I think also that we will see that wickedness continues to grow. It is surely everywhere. It continues to expand. Even the unsaved are asking the question, what the heck is going on? And I remembered when I was praying back in November, the Lord gave me this scripture when I was talking or thinking about and praying about why there was wickedness everywhere these days. And it was Psalm 12:8, where the statement is, the wicked freely strut about. Let me see. The wicked freely strut about. Then what is vile? When what is vile is honored amongst men. And so I think that. Sorry about that. I kind of banged my camera, so I got a little distracted there. But Psalm 12:8, the wicked freely strut about when what is vile is honored amongst men. Boy, and if that's not something that we see going about in the United States and across the world, I really don't know what is. So I think we'll see that glowing more evil globally, just evil everywhere and wickedness. I want to share some dreams I know in the future here that the Lord has shown me, the spirits that have come into the United States, and I believe that's a lot about that, behind that. And there are a multitude of signs that we could be discussing. And I'm not going to go through the long litany list. Hopefully these are some of the things we'll talk about in the videos to come. But I wanted to get posted early this year. Like I said, I've been quite quiet because right from the very beginning I said, unless I really felt that the Lord was asking me to post, I wasn't looking to post just for the sake of posting. However, for 2024, I do believe that there is more that the Lord would have me to share. I think the timing is right. I think that, well, what I know is I just feel that unction. So I want to be obedient to that and let it see where it goes. So for now, may God's face shine upon you. May He be with you. May you fall in love with Him in a first love relationship, because it is all about relationship. May you look forward to 2024, that no matter what the events of the year bring, no matter what challenges may come, we know that this is the end of the book, right? We know that these things must come to pass so that what is written must unfold as God has written it, and we lean on Him. We lean on Him for our peace. We lean on Him for our protection. We lean on Him for our deliverance, whether He delivers us from something, through something, or by something. So for now, look up, because your redemption draws near.